Guys, welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Today I am joined by Ben, and we're going to be talking about the news that broke earlier on today. And if there's ever a reason why you shouldn't run your mouth before something happens, well, we've just seen why. Guys, if you haven't already found out, I'm sure you have. Tommy Fury has had to pull out of his fight with Jake Paul. And literally just a couple of weeks from the fight, he's had to pull out. We believe it's due to illness, although that hasn't fully been confirmed. And I don't think, as we're recording, anything has come out yet from Tommy Fury's camp. But Ben, I mean, what was your initial reaction when you heard this? Because it was just complete shock to me, especially after the way that, you know, he's been running his mouth, saying that he said he could beat him with one arm tied behind his back, didn't he, if I recall rightly?
Yeah, he spoke a good game, hasn't he, Tommy? He said all the right things at the right time. And like he said in his own words, this fight's for money and to shut him up because it's not going to help his boxing career. But his boxing career could be damaged by the loss, and he knows this. But when this fight was announced, I wasn't too bothered about it. It was one of those YouTuber taking on a box. I wasn't bothered. But then as it was getting closer, I was looking forward to one of them getting shut up. One of them can fall back into the distance, and then you only got to hear the one talking. And I was looking forward to that. And now, I don't think the fight will ever happen. Jake Paul always gets bragging rights, and it'll be this back and forth all the time. And I'm surprised I'm going to say this. I'm a bit disappointed.
Yeah, weirdly I am too, because as it got closer to the fight, I think originally people were going from, you know, being firmly in Tommy's corner. And, you know, that's from kind of when it was first announced. And I kind of feel that like over the last few months, because it's been talked about for some time, hasn't it? I almost feel that everyone's been a bit more gradually not heading a lot towards obviously Jake's side, but more towards the middle, and just thinking, if there is a way, can they just punch each other and knock each other out at the same time? I think everyone would have took that and loved it, because Tommy's not really been respecting the sport of boxing, has he? I mean, his latest performance, which has been some time ago now, he talked about how he was partying in Miami only a week or so ago. And you do wonder, don't you, whether he, you know, I mean, if he is ill, let's hope he gets better, of course. But you do wonder if he was perhaps still in the mind state going into the fight.
Yeah, I think you're right with what you're saying. He's so hit and miss. What is it? He's had 5 fights. Don't quote me on that. But I think 2 of them, you've looked at, thought, God, he doesn't look too bad. But then the others, these are journeymen. And some of them, he's just not looked up to scratch. And I just think that if he's not injured, then what's going on?
Well, as you said, he's had, you know, it's 7 fights he's had, 4 of which have come from KOs. And when you're actually looking at like the records of these people, the first person he fought had 10 wins, 102 losses to his name. That was his first ever fight. He then fought someone else, Callum Ide, who had 26 losses. The next fight he had after that also had 26 losses. The next 2 fights after that, not so many losses, but they'd never won a fight and had lost every professional fight they had. And then you finally move on to Jordan Grant was the only one that he'd faced who was a 2-0 fighter, which he actually only won on points. So these last 2 fights, he's only won on points. So you do wonder, doesn't seem to really be having that proper mentality. Of course, someone will give a quick shout out to Campbell Hatton, who picked up the win at the weekend. You saw he's actually coming with that right mentality. He's not just living off the name. He's actually, he's actually there to build a proper boxing career. You know, people have talked, and he's talked about Tommy as whether this was a fight, you know, just to get some good money and shut him up. But, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. Do you feel this is kind of the kind of fights that Tommy should just be getting involved in? Because I don't think anyone takes him as a serious boxer. And there hasn't really been that much when you look against the people he's faced. Yes, he is early in his career, but, he hasn't looked amazing, has he?
Now, the thing is, a lot of people say they won't judge a boxer till they get to 10 fights. And I get what he's doing, because this could be one of his biggest paydays. So I get that side. But if you want to be taken seriously, I do think he should just stay away from that route. And I think, like you mentioned, Campbell Hatton, try and do it the right way. It's hard when you're a boxer living in a shadow. And you look at what Conor Ben's done. He's making his own way. He's had 20 fights, and he's just taking his time, and it's the right way to do it. And I think if Tommy was serious about boxing, he probably should have gone more down that route. Just get the fights, get the rounds, keep improving, show something different. But he hasn't. He's just jumped straight into this social media thing, and then all the people who followed him on Love Island are following. And don't get me wrong, it's clever if he just wants the payday. But I think as boxing fans, you want more, don't you?
Yeah, and I think his argument would be, I can pick up £1 million. He'd probably be getting more than that after all the pay-per-views and just, come back to his boxing career. I'm in the middle with that because, look, if someone paid me £1 million to get in the ring based off, no real boxing experience, then, you'd probably jump at the chance, wouldn't you? Especially when you're fighting someone that's also not really got much boxing experience. But look, enough on Tommy. Obviously, this leaves the question of what's going to happen to obviously the fight that was scheduled for Miami, Jake Paul. It looks like potentially Tyron Woodley will get his rematch. He's prepared to step in. Do you think there's any danger of Jake actually slipping up on this one? Because Tyron Woodley did give him a little bit of trouble, didn't he, last time?
Yeah, I think when you're in with a fighter, there's always trouble, isn't there? There's always a chance, but it's 12 days' notice. Woodley's saying he's been in the gym, but I think he's going to say that, isn't he? He's not going to go, oh, no, I'm not. And I don't know. I think it's the right call because I do think Jake Paul might have avoided him. So now it's only the 12 days' notice. Jake Paul's been doing it in the gym, and he's probably thought it's the best chance of making it more convincing this time. I do think whoever wins will be a stoppage on this fight. And now I think it's a good move on both parts because Woodley wouldn't have got this fight otherwise, I don't think.
I agree because I think for Woodley, I think, if Jake had if Jake had lost to Tommy, then I think maybe we would have seen that rematch potentially. But I also think at the same time that, Jake would have gone into that fight fully believing he would have been able to beat Tommy. And if he did, then he'd probably be starting to look more towards actual boxers than, these people that are coming from, obviously Tyron Woodley coming from a UFC background. But, look, it's Tyron Woodley. He's got the rematch. But as you say, he's only 12 days notice. And I think there's a difference, isn't there, from being actually in the gym, fully training for an opponent and just being in the gym, maybe just doing your rounds on a day-to-day.
Yeah, but it's that fighter mentality, isn't it? If someone comes knocking, especially with a good payday, you're going to fight. And I must admit, I have respect for Tyron Woodley stepping in at this stage because he won't get his hands on him another way. And it's going to... I don't think I'm as excited for it now because being the Brits, you wanted to see that. And like I say, one of them being shut up. I was really looking forward to that. But no, I think we'll see what happens on the 18th and we'll see if this fight goes ahead.
Yeah, that of course. And we'll see if Tommy does eventually end up rebooking a fight with Jake Paul. Maybe the suspense of it a bit more might get even more money brought in, or maybe people. But, it's a risky one though, isn't it? Because of course, if Jake Paul slips up now on the in Miami in a couple of weeks' time, it's going to be. Well, what happens from there? But we obviously, guys, will be reacting to that should it happen. Ben, obviously, there was other boxing that went on this weekend, and we'll give a few shout outs to those fighters. I'll just hand that straight over to you to do.
No, it was a great weekend of boxing, wasn't it? Really, like you already mentioned, Campbell Hatton, and then Anthony Yard got his revenge in the 4th round knockout against Lyndon Arthur. But he did what he did best, didn't he? He looked for the knockout. That is what he's good at, just putting people down and don't try and be something you're not. And I think that was a great performance. Then we roll on to the show on DAZN on the night. You got Hrgovic picked up a victory by stoppage. Jessica McCaskill picked up a victory by stoppage. And then if you haven't seen Montana Love's ring walk, I recommend you watch it. I was pretty impressed by it. And then obviously Devin Haney did what he said he was going to do in a tough fight against Jojo Diaz. And now he potentially sets up that fight with George Kambosos, which I think we all want to see. Possibly Australia. That's to finally get a unified champion in the lightweight division. It's an exciting time. It's going to be good next year. And talking to lightweight, Gervonta Davis got taken all the way, which I think surprised a few people. Says he hurt his hand in the 6th, but that was a close fight. I think it was very close. He won on the 12th round. If he'd have lost that 12th round, it was a draw.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, exactly. It would have been, and it's it was a bit closer call, wasn't it? Just finishing on that one. It's a bit closer call than you would have thought. Be interesting to see if the injuries are perhaps true, but of course, potential opponents for Davis were coming out saying they were impressed. We saw that on Twitter with a couple of them. But yeah, just in general, it was obviously a great weekend for boxing. And, there's a few more good fights coming up before the end of the year. So, guys, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll keep you up to date with all the boxing news. Goodbye.
Cheers.